Most people assume that if someone has serious money, it will be obvious. You'll see it in what they drive, where they live, how quickly they spend. Wealth, in our minds, is loud. It shows up in upgrades and confidence and visible comfort. But in real life, some of the wealthiest people you'll meet don't look wealthy at all. They question purchases. They keep things longer than expected. They avoid unnecessary upgrades. From the outside, it can look like scarcity, even though they could afford far more. So what's going on? There's a psychological shift that happens when money stops being something you're trying to prove. When wealth becomes stable instead of fragile, behavior changes. Spending becomes slower, decisions become calmer, image matters less. In this video, we're breaking down the psychology of people who act poor when they're actually rich, and why that mindset is often the reason they stay rich in the first place. Let's start with the first shift. Section 1. Wealth stops being performance. In the early stages of building money, it often feels like something you have to show. The promotion, the new car, the upgraded apartment. They're not just purchases, they're signals. Signals that you're progressing, that you're not behind, that you've made it further than you used to be. But something changes once wealth becomes stable. When money is no longer fragile, when it's invested, diversified, and quietly growing, the need to prove it fades. You stop looking at purchases as evidence. You stop needing them to confirm your success. The identity shift happens internally. Instead of thinking, "What will people think if I have this?" the question becomes, "Do I even care?" That's why genuinely wealthy people often look understated. The emotional charge behind status symbols disappears. A bigger house doesn't make them feel more secure. A louder car doesn't make them feel more respected. Those purchases no longer add to their identity, and if something doesn't add meaning, it doesn't feel urgent. From the outside, this can look like extreme frugality. It can look like they're holding back, but it's not restraint, it's detachment. They're not trying to act poor. They've simply stopped treating wealth like a performance. Section 2. They optimize for control, not comfort. As income rises, most people upgrade almost automatically. The apartment becomes a house, the house becomes a larger house, the car payment increases. Vacations shift from relaxing to extravagant. None of these choices are inherently wrong. The problem isn't comfort, it's commitment. Every upgrade quietly adds a new layer of obligation. People who are truly wealthy think one step further. They don't just ask, "Can I afford this right now?" They ask, "What will this require from me long term?" That question changes everything. A bigger lifestyle doesn't just increase comfort, it increases dependency. Higher fixed costs mean you must sustain higher income. Larger mortgages, luxury leases, private schooling, club memberships, premium subscriptions, they all demand consistency. They narrow your margin for error. They reduce your ability to slow down, pivot, experiment, or recover from setbacks without stress. Wealthy individuals who appear modest understand this trade-off at a deep level. They know that visible comfort can quietly become invisible pressure. So instead of expanding their lifestyle to match every income increase, they often expand their margin instead. Low fixed costs give them breathing room. They can turn down a bad business deal. They can leave a toxic partnership. They can take a sabbatical. They can invest aggressively during downturns. Their flexibility isn't motivational. It's mathematical. When they drive a normal car or live below what they technically qualify for, it isn't because they lack options. It's because they are deliberately preserving them. They value mobility over maintenance, control over cosmetics. Acting poor keeps their cost of living predictable, and predictability creates power. Stability, in their world, isn't boring. It's leverage. Section 3. They fear lifestyle inflation more than missing out. Most people are afraid of missing out. Wealthy people are afraid of locking themselves in. They understand something subtle but powerful. Every upgrade quietly becomes the new normal. A bigger house doesn't feel big for long. A luxury car becomes just the car. A higher standard of living resets your baseline, and once that baseline rises, it rarely goes back down without pain. That's why they hesitate before upgrading, even when they can easily afford it. They don't look at purchases as isolated moments. They look at the permanent ripple effect. Higher insurance, higher maintenance, higher expectations, higher monthly burn. They think in decades, not in seasons. They know that fixed expenses quietly erode optionality. The more you must earn to maintain your lifestyle, the fewer risks you can take. And the fewer risks you can take, the slower your wealth compounds. So what looks like frugality is often strategic restraint. They would rather protect the engine than polish the exterior. Acting conservative isn't about deprivation, it's about defending long-term momentum. Section 4. They see money as strategic energy. For most people, money is something you convert into comfort. For the quietly wealthy, money is something you position for power. They don't see cash as idle, they see it as optionality. Liquidity feels safer than visible assets because liquidity can move, it can respond, it can seize opportunity. A paid-off car sitting in the driveway doesn't create leverage, deployable capital does. That's why they often prefer assets that are productive over assets that are impressive. They would rather hold investments, equity, or accessible reserves than sink everything into things that look successful but can't be easily redirected. When they evaluate spending, it rarely goes through an emotional filter. It goes through opportunity cost. Not, do I want this, but what does this prevent me from doing later? That shift changes everything. Acting frugal isn't about scarcity, it's about preserving strategic energy. Because when capital stays flexible, it can multiply. When it's locked into lifestyle, it just sits there. Section 5. They exit the comparison economy. One of the quietest shifts that happens when someone becomes truly wealthy is that they stop competing in public. Not because they suddenly lack ambition, but because they realize how expensive comparison actually is. For most people, spending decisions are influenced by what others are doing. A friend upgrades their house, so you start questioning yours. A coworker buys a new car, and your perfectly fine vehicle suddenly feels outdated. Social media amplifies this effect, constantly presenting curated versions of success that quietly raise your personal baseline. But wealthy thinkers begin to see comparison as a liability. They understand that every time you measure your life against someone else's, you risk inflating your lifestyle without improving your freedom. And lifestyle inflation doesn't just cost money, it reduces optionality. It locks you into higher fixed expenses and higher expectations. So instead of playing the game better, they step out of it entirely. They don't feel compelled to match other people's spending. They don't explain why they chose the smaller house or the older car. They don't defend conservative financial choices. They are comfortable being underestimated. That silence becomes a strategic advantage. When people don't know what you have, they can't attach expectations to it. There's no pressure to perform wealth, no obligation to upgrade publicly, no need to signal success through consumption. Acting modest, in this sense, is protective. It shields both capital and peace of mind. By exiting the comparison economy, they free themselves from one of the most powerful psychological forces that keeps others financially stretched, and in doing so, they quietly make wealth easier to maintain. When wealthy people act poor, it isn't insecurity, it isn't fear, and it definitely isn't scarcity thinking, it's control. There are two completely different games being played in the world of money. One is the game of appearance, looking successful, signaling status, upgrading visibly. The other is the game of insulation, lowering dependency, protecting optionality, and building quiet leverage. The first game gets attention. The second game builds permanence. True wealth often looks boring on purpose. It looks like stable housing instead of constant upgrades. It looks like an older car that's paid off. It looks like liquidity sitting patiently instead of decorative assets demanding maintenance. From the outside, it may not impress anyone. From the inside, it feels calm. That calm is the point. So the real question isn't whether someone acts rich or acts poor. The real question is this: are you building image or insulation? Are your financial decisions designed to be seen or designed to strengthen your position? Take a moment and think about which psychological shift in this video hit you the hardest. Was it stepping out of comparison, prioritizing control over comfort, seeing money as strategic energy instead of emotion? Drop it in the comments. I read them. And if this kind of breakdown helps you think about wealth differently, not louder, but smarter, subscribe. We'll keep unpacking the psychology behind real financial power in the next one.